Deep beneath Gotham's surface, profound evil stirs, and even the world's greatest detective might miss the clues pointing to a plan far larger than one crime lord, a conspiracy that could involve every villain Gotham's ever faced. Welcome everybody to another exciting episode, another edition of A Week in Geekdom here on YouTube. I am your host, Giovannie Menendez, and today we're taking a look at the Bat Universe on our comics reviews. This time we're talking about Batman Eternal Volumes 1, Volumes 2, and Volumes 3. Jesus Christ, this was a long title, 52 issues. I believe this came out in 2014, when the character was celebrating its 75th anniversary, and they decided to publish a year-long weekly series, of course, 52 issues, basically involving every single aspect of Batman's life, whether it be Alfred, the Robins, Batgirl, Batwoman, everybody, every single cornerstone of the Bat universe was used on this story. And it all began here with Volume 1 as the first 21 issues, and then the second one only has 22 to 34, and then this one finishes it off. And it's a pretty large story. Now with this comes some pros and cons. Pros, you get a very long story with a lot of character development and character examinations and all that stuff. And cons, for some readers, it might be just a tiny bit too long. And that is evident when you're finishing the first book. Of course, I read it in trades. I didn't collect it in singles back then. When you're reading it in trades, each book has such a cliffhanger ending, or at least the first two, that when you're starting the subsequent volume, you feel like, oh, okay, I have to go back into the eternal story, if you will. And there's so many twists and turns in here, where at the end I was just like, I really like the story, but I also want it to be over, and I want to know who did it, who's the evil mastermind and all that stuff. The main villain in this book, you don't find out until the very end, and it keeps you guessing. You think it's going to be one villain, you think it's going to be another, and it just keeps going and going. And with Volume 1, there's a mobster involved, and I didn't want to read the description in the back, which basically spoils it, just in case you haven't read it. It was a very nice surprise that I had completely forgotten about, but now that I think about it, yeah, they kind of spoiled it on all the news articles. And then Volume 2 features somebody which I really, really like, and is one of my favorite Batman villains, and is a nice callback to his first issues. And then Volume 3 reveals the mastermind, which, it involves heavily the New 52 Batman mythos. I don't know. I don't think I don't know if I would recommend Batman Eternal to a new reader, simply because it is such a dense read. There's so much going on. There's like 5 plots going at the same time, and basically, Batman is stopping Professor Pig from unleashing this nanotech virus or something that's been going on with the kids at Gotham, and they venture into the sewer. Commissioner Gordon pursues them, and he has one of the men cornered, and he fires at him, but the shot misses. He injures the dude. He thinks the gangster has a gun on him, so he shoots him. I think he was aiming for the shoulder or something like that. Turns out supposedly the guy wasn't armed. He hit a light box or a light fuse or something like that. The fuse box. He hits the fuse box, and a train derails, killing, I think it was 162 passengers on board. He is charged for manslaughter. They get a new commissioner. That all happens on the very first issue, so I'm not spoiling anything. That's the basis of the Eternal storyline, of how somebody might corrupt somebody as famous as Gordon, and it's up to Batman and friends to clear him of any problems. And you get a lot of characters from the Bat villains like Killer Croc, Catwoman, Mr. Freeze, and even some of the lesser known villains that plague Gotham City like Signal Man, Clue Master, and so on and so forth. And yeah, it's this extensive rogues gallery that keeps you guessing which one is the actual mastermind. And some villains actually show up that you're not expecting, like the infamous Joker's daughter. I could care less about, but apparently she's a thing. So, or she was a thing back in the New 52 era. And you get another subplot with some weird stuff that's happening over at Arkham Asylum, and some spooky stuff that's being resurrected, of course, relating to an old villain of Batman. And Batman assigns Batwing and James Corrigan to investigate, so that goes somewhere else. You got the nanotech stuff, which involves my favorite Robin, Tim Drake. You've got another subplot that involves the whole drama with Gordon and the getting a new commissioner and police corruption. And this is just a massive story. Of course, it has time to tell it because it's like 52 issues long, and in several parts. Most of the issues or most of the parts are just setting up more plots and more story elements, which can drag the story a little bit because yeah, it's this massive story that you're trying to tell in 52 issues, and it all can't end on cliffhangers one after the other. You got to set up more stories and all that stuff. So it got to a point where it's actually pretty funny, where I thought I knew where it was headed, and then they're like, nope, he's not the bad guy, somebody else is. So you're setting up a whole nother ladder of mystery until we find out, nope, it's not him, it's another guy. And it continues onward until we reach, where's volume 3? Until we reach volume 3 here at the end, where you finally figure it out. And it threw me for a loop, because I knew who the main bad guy was, but there's a swerve thrown in there. Yeah, I was not expecting that at all, and it's actually pretty clever, and it just goes to show you, this is the moral of the story. You cannot judge a book by its cover. If you've read the story, then I think you know what I mean, especially with the main bad guy. You know, maybe one of the downfalls of this book is that there's so many stories going on at the same time. Not everybody's gonna like the same stuff. That happened to me because the main story, when it first began, when I first started reading the book, it was pretty interesting, but then it went off into side stories that involved, like I mentioned, Corrigan, aka the Spectre, and Batwing, Lucas Fox. And I found that really interesting, well, basically because I love the paranormal and magical side of DC Comics, and the whole Tim Drake stuff because he's my favorite Robin, and he's one of my favorite characters of all the DC heroes. So I found those stories really interesting, of course, with Batgirl doing her own stuff, looking for some other evidence that could free up her father. Whereas the main plot that was going on with crime warfare was interesting, but not as exciting as some other aspects. So it's this mishmash of stories that makes it a very interesting read. So yeah, that's Batman Eternal in a nutshell. The art, however, is a different story. This is a different animal. There's so many people involved. Let's see. We've got, of course, Scott Snyder and James Tynion IV writing this, or co-writing. But you also got people like Ray Fawkes, John Layman, and Tim Seeley writing all of this. So at times, certain issues will not be as cohesive as you might think they will. In art duties, you've got an all-star of artists going on this book. You got Jason Fabok, Dustin Nguyen, Gilliam March, Andy Clark, Trevor McCarthy, Riccardo Bruccelli, Ian Bertham, and so on and so forth. And then in volume 2, you got even more people drawing. You even got David Lafuente, which is one of my favorite artists because I love his manga anime take. So I thought that was actually one of my highlights, by the way. I thought that was pretty cool. You got R.M. Guerra, Fernando Pasarin, Jason Fabok again, and I love that the really important issues, you got Fabok on it. Everything else, let's get everybody else on the title. And it suffers, because you're reading a cool issue, and then it switches from something super realistic, dark and gritty, to David Lafuente, which is very manga-esque and very anime with bright colors. And then we go back to another artist, which is using CG stuff with their drawings, and then we go to someone who's more stylized and more sketchy. It can be really distracting in my opinion, but overall it's a fun story. If you love Batman, you wanted to celebrate that anniversary a few years ago, then yeah, this is a very cool book. Plus it brought Stephanie Brown into the New 52 stuff. Now it doesn't really matter, but yeah, this was a massive undertaking that I think is actually pretty cool and reveals certain aspects of the Batman universe that were not previously thought of, I guess. Snyder and James did a fantastic job, in my opinion, of just celebrating the anniversary and just what makes Batman and Gotham City such a special place with its many diverse characters and roster that I think all of you guys are going to enjoy. Plus, this cover is just amazeballs. It's literally one of my favorite Batman images of all time. I love that. Yeah, so if you're in it for the long haul and you want to read a long ass story with a mostly satisfying ending that doesn't really rely too much on previous books, maybe you sort of kind of need to read the New 52 stuff, but overall I'd say it's a pretty entertaining read. However, yeah, it's like too long for its own good, I think. I don't know. What do you guys think? Let me know down below. Tell me what was your favorite moment in the Eternal series. Of course, there's Batman and Robin Eternal. I have to read that as well and review it. But overall, pretty awesome story in my honest opinion. So yeah, as always guys, you can follow me on your favorite social media platform. Just type a Week in Geekdom and I'm there for you guys. Alright, I gotta go. I have more books to read and review for you guys, and I will catch all of you on our next episode. Look at this. Robo Bane versus Red Hood.